So thank you everyone for coming to our webinar today. Today we'll be talking about the future of fruit quality assessment with near-infrared spectroscopy and artificial neural networks. Today's webinar is mostly an expert spotlight on our two guests that we're very excited to have with us today. We have Nick Anderson and Dr. Carrie Walsh from Central Queensland University. They've done a lot of work with the F750 and with chemometric modeling, especially in mangoes. So we'll hear a lot about that today. I'm really excited to get some expert feedback on how they go about their model building process. So before we start, I really quick first want to point out our webinar moderator today is Scott Trimble. He is our marketing director at Felix Instruments and CID Bioscience. He's been with the company for about 3 years now, so he'll be moderating the chat. So anytime you talk to someone in the chat that's from CID, that's going to be Scott. And so he'll also be helping us with the Q&A session at the end of this webinar. So before we get started, some housekeeping. This is pretty important. We want to make sure that everyone gets their questions addressed. So if you have any questions at all relating to the content of this webinar, to what Dr. Walsh or what Nick talk about today, what I talk about, please put all those questions into the Q&A function within Zoom. And if you have anything regarding technical issues, if the video is frozen, if you can't hear me speaking, then those issues you can put into the chat function. So any kind of the technical difficulties, but for all the questions, please put those in the Q&A because that's what we're going to check at the end of the session, at the end of the webinar. We'll be checking that Q&A chat function, and that's where we'll get all of our questions from. And I forgot to change the name on this, but Scott. So Scott will be posting all the relevant links and the extra information needed in the chat. So anytime you see a link within the presentation that you can't physically click on, Scott will post that in the chat. And so keep your eyes out for that. Introductions first. So my name is Galen. I'm an application scientist at Felix Instruments. I have a bachelor's degree in biochemistry and a master's degree in food science from Michigan State University. I'm an IFT certified food scientist, and previously I was managing an analytical food laboratory and working as a food safety consultant for the produce and for the cannabis and food manufacturing sectors. So today, it's going to be mostly Nick and Carrie talking today. I already gave some introductions. I'll talk about our company for a little bit, give an introduction to what kind of topics will be covered today from our two guest experts, and then we'll get right into the presentation from Dr. Walsh and Nick Anderson, and they'll present their work, and then we'll go right into a Q&A session where you can ask whatever questions you might have about the content of the webinar or other questions related to what we've talked about. So just really briefly to go over who we are at Felix Instruments. We were founded about 6 years ago. We apply more than 30 years of experience in plant research instrumentation to create tools for the agricultural industry. So we have a lot of experience building tools for the research community. We kind of took that knowledge and we kind of focused it more towards the commercial agricultural industry. And we take pride in creating these non-destructive measurement tools that can help commercial agriculture produce a more consistent and higher quality product. Our instruments are known for their ability to produce instant accurate results. They're very durable, field ready, portable instruments. We take a lot of pride in our data transparency. So you take full ownership of the data from our instruments. You can get all the data output you need from that instrument. We don't hide anything from you or anything like that. So all of our products are engineered, tested, manufactured, all under the same roof at our headquarters in Camas, Washington in the United States. So today, the expert spotlight is on Dr. Carrie Walsh and Nick Anderson. We're really excited to have them here today. They're from Central Queensland University. What they'll be talking about, kind of just a really quick summary here. They're going to be talking about some applications in the commercial agricultural sector for near-infrared spectroscopy. I'm talking about the history of instrumentation and how it led to the F750, a little bit about chemometrics, and then kind of from there transitioning to some model building, a discussion about key considerations for characterizing your commodity, building robust chemometric model, And then really the bulk of the presentation today is going to be some really great insight into the limitations of partial least squares regression, and how a lot of those limitations can actually be corrected, and some of the other benefits of using artificial neural networks or other machine learning techniques for deploying models across multiple devices. Then at the very end, they'll have a little bit of discussion about real life application, real life data from the Australian Mango Industry Association, and then talk about the future of this industry. And then we'll wrap it up and go right into the Q&A. So quick introductions. Nick Anderson is a PhD candidate at...
Okay, well, good morning from my time zone. You should be seeing that as a share screen now. Galen, that's okay?
Yep, looks good to me.
Okay, all right. So I will lead off the discussion with a bit of a history, really, of work done here at CQ, and then hand across to Nick to get into more recent topics. And I'll point you particularly to this reference. It's a wrap-up, really, of our experiences. It was published last year, just going through the science, really, of point spectroscopy. So as opposed to imaging spectroscopy, we're talking about, you know, a point measurement. Of course, it's not really a single point, it's a volume that the instrument is measuring of the fruit. But just differentiating it from imaging spectroscopy. So yeah, just a bit of self-promotion there, if you like, to reference that review, which I think covers the topics that we're about to speak through pretty well. Many of you are in the research game and therefore in the publishing game. So I just, again, highlighting from that review, point to where novelty lies, and therefore where publications will likely get accepted. One is in the chemometrics area, just coming up with new chemometric approaches. You know, PLS superseded MLR decades ago, but it itself is starting to get superseded. So there's certainly room to move in the chemometrics area in terms of novelty. Instrumentation development is another area of novelty. Tends to be very specific to the application. So what works for one particular application is not necessarily optimum for the next application. There's also new applications. So using existing chemometrics, using existing instrumentation, just working out that does it work for a given application. So in our case, talking about fruit, does it work for, you know, a new passion fruit, or, you know, custard apple, some new commodity where it hasn't been used previously. And then finally, once it's all accepted, it's just a tool. So it's just another weighing balance or another tool in the laboratory. So using that tool in an agronomic sense, there is novelty in just the use of it to deliver an agronomic change in the industry. And I'll refer to this data set a couple of times. So here's work across the mango industry. There's 11,000 mango spectra in there. So this is, we say, a trend in science research is to make data sets public. So rather than having to collect your own data and then undertake some chemometrics, for example, in days gone by, you'd see papers published with 50 spectra, or even 500 spectra. But now there are these data sets publicly available, across instruments, across varieties, across growing districts. So potentially, and you can see this happening with this data set, is an F750 data set on mango. And it's out there for anybody to play with chemometric development. So just working through a couple of those areas of novelty that we've touched on just previously, and you can use it. It's just the secondary correlations often break down such that under certain conditions it fails, and therefore your model suddenly it leaves you high and dry. Instrument history, as Galen mentioned, I started off in this game back in the late 1990s. We implemented NIR in an inline setting, and that, of course, is now spread across most large grader manufacturers in terms of being able to grade inline. However, grading in line is too late in many circumstances. If you've got a specification and you've got fruit below that specification, you're throwing it away. So it's wasted fruit. So better to go portable and go into the field where you can, if you've got under-spec fruit, you can do some management tasks. You can leave the fruit on the tree longer. You can alter the agronomy to deliver fruit on spec to the pack house. So that took us down this path, with handheld development and agronomic implementation. So thinking a little bit about instrumentation, first question is, choosing an instrument, what wavelength region to work in. So here's, we're dealing with a fresh commodity in fruit, so high moisture content. So here's the absorption spectra of water. So looking from the UV through the visible into the shortwave NIR where we're working, and then into the mid-NIR, mid-range infrared, sorry. So the absorption spectra of water, very high absorption. This little window here, water is transparent in the visible. It's fairly transparent in the and the light, visible light. Obviously, if I shine it onto the edge of a citrus fruit, it's scattered and it's moving right through that whole fruit. So if I put a light source on one side and a detector on the other, I can get information from quite a large part of the fruit. And that's true for near infrared in this shortwave region as well, to be able to push through. So yeah, first thought is about wavelength range. There's certainly the capacity to work in longer wavelength range, but just keep in mind what volume of the fruit that you are then using if you choose to work up in those longer ranges. Optical geometry then, we can orientate the detector with the light source in different ways. So that will pick up different types of information from the object, in our case, the fruit. If we just had a light source here and a detector here, we would see a lot of specular reflection. That's light that's just come off the surface of the sample with absolutely no information from inside the sample. We will get some information where the light has gone in and scattered through the fruit to get into that shadow area. Finally, areas of novelty is in developing a model in the chemometrics. There's novelty in new pre-processing techniques. There's novelty in the model type, and Nick will talk about that momentarily. In transfer between instruments, in dealing with temperature in the sample, in the object. And again, I'd refer you to use of these sort of large data sets that you're beginning to be published. End of the day, it's robustness. That is, you've got to prove that whatever technique works isn't overfitted to your existing data set. And many publications take a data set, split it into test sets, is quite critical in showing the real world application. And just to come back to this geometry, specular reflection, if you have this sort of arrangement where you have a light source and a detector, you are getting a lot of specular reflection, some mixture of some information coming from inside and a lot of information coming from the surface. And that will entirely, that ratio will entirely depend on the surface characteristics. So fruit grown under different conditions, the cell size will be different. The amount of diffuse reflection and specular reflection will change all the time. So if you use a reflectance geometry, and there are many instruments out there that operate in that way, you can build a model, and you'll see a good model on
linear and local models. And I also developed my own local model called Lover, local optimized by variance regression. So I encourage everyone, if you guys enjoy modeling or you're getting into modeling, download my data set, try some modeling out and do a paper and compare it to the results that I got. All right, that's it for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nick. I will pull up. All right, so as Nick alluded to in his presentation there, we do have a really exciting announcement for everyone. So we will be releasing fairly soon a new F750 firmware and app builder software. So this is a upgrade from the current firmware and model builder. We are going to have new and improved, fully customizable user interfaces on the instruments. The app builder software itself will be able to build dozens of PLS or neural network models within a single application, which you can then deploy on a 750. You can deploy multiple apps within that 750. So there's no more extreme limitations of number of spectra within a model, number of models within the app. So you can have, more than 2 analytes per commodity. You can have multiple commodities within a single app, or multiple cultivars of a single commodity. So we're really excited for this to be released. It will be coming soon. And so keep an eye out either on our website or for newsletters coming from us announcing the release of the software and the firmware. This is this is a result of great collaboration between us and Nick and Carrie Walsh. They've helped us a lot with integrating the work that Nick's done with the neural networking, integrating that into our software so that researchers can build the most robust models that they can. So really excited for that. If you guys do want to get connected, want to get updates on that, follow us on social media. You can sign up for newsletters on our website, and our website also will post regular updates as well. So also connect with us on LinkedIn, and we are happy to communicate via LinkedIn as well. And last but not least, we're going to jump into our question and answer session. If you would like a quote for an instrument for an F750, feel free to click that link. Scott will post that link in the chat. That'll take you directly to a quote generator. So for now, what we're going to do is actually jump right into that Q&A. I can see we have 4 open questions currently. And we're going to go ahead and start, and I'll have Carrie, Dr. Walsh, and Nick jump in on these questions as well to help answer. It looks like most of these questions are related to your guys' work anyways. So the first question from Renee is, for modeling artificial neural network, do you have any protocol for establishing the architecture, the number of nodes and or layers? So Nick, I think you're probably best suited for that question.
Hey, Renee. So for the model that we did, I only did 1 layer, but for the number of nodes, I just iteratively tested every single one. We have a high performance computer here at the uni, and I basically just did a grid search function, which was testing every single number of neurons, 1 to 10, and also the training rate. So you could probably do a 3-dimensional grid search, or you would have to test it iteratively with multiple nodes and different layer techniques. But what I've found with neural networks is they're quite insensitive to training, meaning that you probably will find that many of the solutions will have similar results. So if you find a result that you find is good for the number of nodes or layers that you're looking for, if you don't have the computational power to test every single combination, you can probably be pretty safe in betting that you're not going to increase your performance significantly with anything. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. The next question is from Alessio. The question is, I might have missed it, but what is the raw data format for the artificial neural network you use?
No, you didn't miss it. I just didn't say it. We used very standard Savitsky-Golay. I think it was second derivative Savitsky-Golay smoothing on 9-point second degree polynomial, something of that like. Again, with the pre-processing, a bit insensitive. To note, we have kept our hard green and ripening fruit separate. in separate models. So we've done a neural network for hard green and we've done a neural network with ripening. We just found that the scattering information was decreasing the prediction results a little bit too much. But there's actually been there's been some publications in using raw absorbance or raw reflectance in neural networks that's found very good results. And I would expect that using raw absorbance data, including the scattering information, might be good to do in a large data set. And it could actually account for the differences between ripening and hard green fruit. That's something we're going to want to look at in the future.
Great. Thank you, Nick. And the next question is there any training material for this new app builder software as well? Yes, of course, when we do go to release it, there will be a manual, videos accompanying that to make sure that everyone has the ability to utilize the app builder software to the best of their ability. We also are always here to reach out to if you have questions. If you need some documentation currently, feel free to reach out to me personally, but I don't believe that is likely the case. But all right, so the next question, Alessio says, thanks, Nick. And then the next question is for Dr. Walsh. So given the state of VIS-NIR spectroscopy and chemometric models, do you see utility in moving from pure chemometry, I guess, is pure chemometry, to the determination of optical physical coefficients, scattering and absorption as defined by the diffuse approximation?
Yeah, good day, Daria.